The first warning light went white instead of red. Mediator Terv Asen felt the change through the floor before the display beside him explained it. A faint, uneven pulse moved through the arbitration vessel's deck, too measured to be weapons fire and too sharp to be a drive correction. Around the oval table, 12 diplomatic aides stopped speaking. On the wall, the live seal of the Galactic Council remained green. The broadcast had not been interrupted. Every council delegation was still watching. Asen looked across the table at Nadia Pell, humanity's senior envoy. She had one hand beside a cooling cup of black tea and the other resting on a stack of printed transit maps she had insisted on bringing aboard. Printed? The Vayer delegation had laughed about that on the first day. No one laughed now. Report, Asen said. His tactical liaison turned from the side console. Vayer patrol groups have crossed the Hearthline exclusion boundary. Asen's jaw tightened. How many? 61 military hulls. The number spread around the room without anyone repeating it. On the council feed, hundreds of remote delegates received the same data. Small windows opened around the central transmission. Homeworld ministries, orbital assemblies, royal courts, military ministries, trade councils. All watching the Hearthline negotiations. All watching what had been advertised as the final chance to prevent a border war. Nadia did not look toward the tactical display. She looked at Vayer Minister Corvin Tal. Tal was already standing. His silver ceremonial mantle had slipped from one shoulder, but his expression remained controlled. This is not an attack, he said. Asen almost admired the speed of it. The Vayer fleet had crossed a boundary both sides had signed only hours earlier, yet Tal had managed to classify the movement before the sensor report had even finished. Nadia finally turned her head. Then what is it? A security repositioning. Across the protected line. The line is temporary. You signed it. We signed a negotiation framework. Nadia touched the top map in her stack. You signed the coordinates. Tal's mouth narrowed. There it was. The detail Asen had never understood. For 9 days, humanity had negotiated coordinates. Not principles. Not prestige. Not historical ownership. Coordinates. Which ship could enter which corridor. How quickly medical craft had to answer distress calls. How close an armed vessel could approach a relief convoy. Which navigational telemetry had to be shared with neutral traffic monitors. How long an unidentified drive flare could persist before it had to be declared. The Vayer had treated the obsession as evidence of political weakness. Asen had not gone that far, but privately he had wondered whether humans were hiding behind technical detail because they lacked the appetite for confrontation. Tal had said as much during a private meal. Humans, he had explained, preferred procedure because procedure delayed decisions. Every hour spent arguing over a line on a map was an hour they did not have to defend it. The reasoning had seemed plausible. Humanity possessed respected military technology, but its presence in Hearthline was modest. 29 armed escorts protected medical transports, engineering ships, food carriers, and the civilian settlements scattered along the disputed route. Vayer planners had counted the escorts. Everyone had. 29. That number had shaped the negotiations. 29 ships could defend a convoy. 29 ships could punish raiders. 29 ships could not dominate a theater against 61 Vayer combat hulls supported by nearby bases. That was the arithmetic beneath Tal's patience. And perhaps beneath Asen's. Nadia raised her tea, discovered it had gone cold, and set it down again. Where are they going? She asked. The liaison enlarged the Hearthline plot. The Vayer groups had divided after crossing the boundary. One wing was moving toward the human relief convoy at Orison Passage. Another was angling behind it. A third remained near the outbound transit throat. Asen felt the pattern before the computer labeled it. Containment. Not an attack. Not yet. Tal spread his hands. You see, no weapons discharge. No civilian craft targeted. My government is merely establishing facts on the ground before the next round of talks. Nadia looked at him for several seconds. The council was watching her now. Asen could feel it in the room even though almost none of the delegates were physically present. The secure broadcast architecture carried no audience noise, yet hundreds of political eyes had waited. Humanity had spent 9 days asking for restraint. 9 days refusing Vayer demands that its escorts withdraw. 9 days offering inspection rights, transit guarantees, joint rescue patrols, neutral verification, and phased demilitarization. The Vayer had interpreted each offer as another price humanity was willing to pay to avoid confrontation. Tal leaned slightly forward. Envoy Pell, this is precisely why I urged you not to make military posturing part of a commercial disagreement. Nadia's expression barely changed. We have not. Then order your escorts away from Orison Passage. No. The answer was so quiet that Asen checked her face. Tal smiled. It was not mockery. Not yet. It was the smile of a man whose model had just produced the answer he expected. Then perhaps, he said, your government should reconsider what it can realistically protect. Behind him, 61 Vayer ship markers continued moving. The human 29 remained still. Asen looked at Nadia's printed maps. One of them had been marked by hand with tiny parallel strokes beside each approved navigation zone. He remembered asking her about those marks. She had said they were verification notes. He had assumed she meant legal verification. Now he was not sure. A signal chimed. The tactical liaison went rigid. Vayer vessels are painting the relief convoy. Tal exhaled through his nose. Targeting radar is a precaution. Nadia looked at him. Minister, an envoy, withdraw them. Return your escorts to the inner line. That was not my question. Tal's smile faded. His next words came carefully. The Vayer Compact will not be ordered from territory under legitimate dispute by a civilization unwilling to enforce its own claims. Asen felt something change. Not in Nadia's. In the room. Human aides stopped looking at the wall display. Instead, almost together, they looked toward her. No panic. No whispered consultation. No demand for instructions from Earth. They simply waited. Asen's uncertainty sharpened. Tal noticed it too. You have spent 9 days requesting council intervention, he said. 9 days proposing compromise after compromise. We have listened. We have been patient, but patience should not be mistaken for acceptance. Nadia gave the smallest nod. I'd agree. Tal hesitated. It was the first hesitation Asen had seen from him all morning. Nadia pulled one of the printed maps from the stack. The paper made a dry sliding sound across the table. Mediator Asen, please confirm the live record. Asen looked toward the council seal. Confirmed. The Galactic Council is receiving this session without delay. Oh yes. Vayer forces crossed the signed Hearthline boundary. Oh yes. Minister Tal has been informed. Oh yes. Humanity has requested withdrawal. Oh yes. Minister Tal declined. Asen looked at Tal. The Vayer minister's throat shifted. Yes, Asen said. Nadia turned to Tal once more. Final request, withdraw your military hulls beyond the line. For the first time, Tal did not answer immediately. His gaze flicked toward his own aides. One touched an earpiece. Another studied the tactical plot. The Vayer groups were nearly in position around the relief convoy. The calculation was obvious. If Tal withdrew now, he lost the advantage his government had spent days creating. If he stayed, humanity would face an accomplished containment maneuver, while the entire Galactic Council watched. Asen realized that Tal had not crossed the boundary despite the broadcast. He had crossed because of it. The Vayer wanted the galaxy to see humanity accept the new reality. A public settlement created precedent. Public humiliation created doctrine. Tal straightened. No. Nadia gathered the remaining maps into one neat stack. Very well. Nothing exploded. No human officer shouted. No alarm changed color. Nadia simply turned toward the communications aide behind her. Transmit closure. The aide touched one key. Asen's console received a diplomatic status update. Human negotiation authority terminated. His eyes moved to the timestamp, then to the Galactic Council seal. Still green. Still live. Nadia faced Tal. Minister Corvin Tal, the diplomatic phase is over. A second status line appeared. Human Defensive Authority, active. Tal's smile returned. But this time Asen saw effort in it. 29 escorts, Tal said. Nadia picked up her cold tea. Oh yes. The first Veyer shot was fired 4 seconds later. It struck nothing. The beam crossed empty space where a human escort had been. Asen stared at the tactical plot. The human formation was moving. Not outward. Inward. That made no sense. The relief convoy was trapped between 2 Veyer wings. Standard defense required the escorts to spread, create distance, and establish overlapping fields of fire around the civilian ships. Instead, the human escorts folded toward the convoy. 29 dark markers compressed into a tight band. Tal laughed once. It was a short sound. There, he said, you see. Nadia said nothing. The Veyer-led wing accelerated. Then its formation broke. Asen leaned toward the display. Not because of damage. No ship had been hit. The Veyer vessels were correcting their courses. One climbed above the transit plane. Another rolled hard to port. A third dumped speed. The entire wing seemed to encounter a problem that the human vessels did not. What happened? Asen asked. His liaison magnified the navigation data. Traffic. Whose? Everyone's. The civilian corridor around Orison Passage was full. Ore barges. Passenger packets. Agricultural carriers. Fuel tenders. Repair ships. Hospital transports. Hundreds of vessels that had spent the last 9 days obeying the temporary navigation agreement. The agreement humanity had insisted be written to the kilometer. The Veyer could move through the corridor. They simply could not do it in formation without violating the very civilian safety separations they had publicly accepted. Tal saw it too. His face hardened. You manipulated commercial traffic. Nadia looked genuinely puzzled. No, the traffic is on the schedule your delegation approved. Asen looked down at the printed map. The tiny parallel strokes. Verification notes. Humanity had not moved the civilian ships. It had known exactly where they would be. Tal snapped an order toward his military liaison. Clear the passage. The liaison murmured into his channel. Several civilian ships changed course. The human escorts moved again. This time Asen understood only slightly more. They were not maneuvering as a fleet. They were maneuvering as pairs and trios. Each element moved through gaps in civilian traffic too narrow for the larger Veyer formations to use safely. They crossed between freight vectors, around hospital lanes, beneath scheduled tug paths. Not fast. Precisely. The Veyer wing tried to match them and had to separate further. Tal's brow lowered. Fire control solution. His liaison answered softly. Unstable. Why? Occlusions. The human ships kept civilians between themselves and the Veyer firing lines without ever hiding directly behind a civilian hull. They were using angles, distance, and timing. Every clean Veyer shot existed for only a moment before a protected traffic lane crossed the background. The Veyer could still fire, but a miss could enter a civilian route. And the Galactic Council was watching. Asen understood the first layer. Humanity had not created a battlefield. It had refused to let the Veyer simplify one. Tal had expected the humans to defend a convoy as if Hearthline were empty space. It was not. It was an inhabited transport system. And for 9 days, the humans had learned every moving part of it. A Veyer cruiser fired. The beam clipped a human escort's outer field and scattered harmlessly. The human ship did not return fire. Tal's confidence strengthened. Your government still wishes to negotiate, he said. Nadia looked at him over the rim of her cup. No. The Veyer cruiser fired again. This time the human escort answered. One pulse. Asen almost missed it. The Veyer cruiser's forward sensor mass disappeared from the tactical network. Not the bridge. Not the engines. Not the reactors. The sensor mast. A second human pulse struck a different Veyer vessel. Its long-range targeting array went dark. A third shot disabled an external communications blade. 3 Veyer hulls remained mobile. 3 remained armed. But their ability to coordinate had been cut apart. Tal stopped smiling. Asen felt his own pulse beating in the soft tissue beneath his jaw. He had seen human weapons demonstrations before. This was not remarkable firepower. That was what unsettled him. The humans were not showing what their weapons could destroy. They were showing what they could choose not to destroy. On the council feed, priority observation requests began stacking along the edge of the screen. Military ministries wanted raw telemetry. Trade governments wanted the traffic data. Neutral systems wanted confirmation that civilian hulls were unharmed. Nadia ignored all of it. Her attention remained on Tal. Tell them to leave. Tal's nostrils widened. You have damaged compact vessels. They crossed the line, surrounded a relief convoy, illuminated civilian-adjacent targets, and fired first. You planned this. We planned for you to keep the agreements. Tal actually laughed. It sounded different now. You expect anyone to believe that. Nadia turned the top printed map around. For 9 days, Asen had seen those pages passed across the table. Traffic geometry. Inspection zones. Response windows. Safe turn radii. Emergency drift channels. Every mark bore Veyer approval. Nadia tapped the signatures at the bottom. We planned for both outcomes. Asen's attention snapped back to the tactical wall. The rear Veyer wing had begun accelerating. Unlike the first group, it was not entering the civilian corridor. It was moving around the entire traffic region. A wide flanking maneuvers. Tal saw Asen notice. There are limits to paperwork, he said. Nadia nodded. Oh yes. The rear wing cleared the last commercial lane. Open space appeared ahead of it. No protected traffic. No navigation restrictions. No political obstacles. At last, Asen thought. Now the real comparison begins. 17 Veyer warships turned toward the human convoy from open space. The human escorts did not turn to meet them. Not once. Asen stared. Envoy. Nadia set down the tea. Watch the boundary markers. He looked. Nothing happened. Then one marker vanished. Not exploded. Vanished. A second disappeared. Then a third. Asen's liaison whispered they moved. Boundary markers. They're not markers. Nadia looked toward him. Navigation custodians. He frowned. During the negotiations, humanity had deployed small unmanned craft along the temporary corridor boundaries. Everyone had treated them as glorified transponders, devices carrying location beacons so civilian captains could identify the exclusion line without constant network access. The Veyer had inspected them. The Council had inspected them. No weapon systems. No significant reactor. No concealed payload. Tal's voice sharpened. They were certified as non-combatant navigation hardware. They are. Then why are they moving? Because the line moved with them. Asen felt cold. The temporary agreement had not defined the Hearthline boundary as fixed coordinates. He remembered the argument now. Humanity had objected to fixed coordinates because the nearby star's mass shadow caused tiny seasonal changes in safe transit geometry. The final text defined the boundary by authenticated custodian positions. The Veyer delegation had accepted. Tal's liaison turned pale beneath his mottled skin. Minister, what? The custodians are closing the outbound lane. Destroy them. Nadia's eyes moved to him. Tal froze. The council was still watching. Destroying the navigation custodians would mean firing on internationally certified civilian safety equipment after crossing a signed boundary and attacking a relief convoy. Tal did not give the order. That pause cost him. The custodians moved only a short distance. It was enough. The wide Vaer flanking group now found itself inside the temporary exclusion zone. Under the agreement, armed vessels inside that zone were required to reduce drive output or be classified as immediate collision threats to civilian traffic. Austin looked at Nadia. You cannot expect them to obey that now. I don't. Then what was the point? Classification. The liaison shouted. Mediator new contacts. Austin turned so fast his knees struck the table. Not ships. At first he thought the display was malfunctioning. Long, thin distortions appeared across the edge of the system map, dark curves where starlight bent around nothing. Then the curves shortened. Objects emerged. Human warships. Not from jump. Not exactly. They had been present beyond the system's bright sensor horizon, drifting under minimum emission while the negotiation continued. Austin counted instinctively and stopped. Tal did not. 29, he whispered. Nadia shook her head. No, the new vessels were not reinforcements to the escorts. They were the escorts. Austin looked back at the convoy. The 29 human markers were still there. Then the identification layer updated. His breath caught. Those ships were escort hulls. Armed, yes, but not fleet combat ships. Humanity had never classified them as such. The Council databases had. Foreign intelligence had. Analysts had seen weapons, armor, and military transponders and placed them in the nearest category they understood. The newly arrived vessels carried a different designation. Warden Line Control SHIPS. Tal stared at Nadia. You concealed a fleet. No, you kept them outside sensor range during negotiations. Oh yes, that is concealment. That is distance. The distinction sounded absurd until Austin remembered the human proposals. Humanity had repeatedly offered mutual standoff limits. The Vaer had rejected every version because they wanted their own reinforcements closer to Hearthline. Humanity had obeyed limits that had never been signed. Its control ships had remained distant enough that ordinary traffic sensors did not register them. Not because they were unable to come closer. Because the diplomats were still talking. Austin felt the truth settle unpleasantly inside him. Human diplomacy had not been buying time for weakness. It had been holding strength back. The Warden ships entered the system without visible engine flare. Their hulls were broad and segmented, layered like overlapping black plates. They did not form a wall. They spread into an arc so shallow that Austin initially mistook it for disorganization. Then every Vaer tactical display flashed. Tal's military liaison stood. Minister, our drives are being ranged. By weapons. No, what does that mean? I don't know. Austin's liaison did. Vector custody. The phrase was unfamiliar. Nadia glanced at her. Explain it. The liaison swallowed. They are measuring every powered Vaer trajectory against the civilian field and the gravity environment. If a Vaer ship accelerates, the Wardens know the limited set of safe vectors it can take without crossing protected traffic. Tal snapped, that does not stop us. No, the liaison said. A human Warden moved. Just one. It crossed the likely escape vector of the nearest Vaer cruiser. The cruiser altered course. A second Warden moved into the revised vector. The cruiser altered again. Then a human escort fired once and removed its drive control antenna. The Vaer ship drifted. Austin stared at the map. The humans were not chasing ships. They were taking away choices. A Vaer destroyer accelerated upward. Two Wardens shifted. The destroyer rolled starboard. A human escort fired. Its targeting array vanished. Another Vaer ship tried to retreat toward the system edge. Three Wardens changed orientation, never coming within direct engagement range. The retreating ship corrected. That correction carried it into the firing geometry of a human escort already waiting there. One pulse. Drive limiter disabled. No reactor breach. No hull breakups. No bodies venting into space. The Veyer fleet remained almost entirely intact and became less free with every second. Asen's fear was not of human firepower anymore. It was of the map. The humans seemed to see the system not as distance, but as decisions. A ship could go left, unless left endangered a hospital lane. It could go right, unless right entered a gravity shear. It could climb, unless a warden occupied the only acceleration window that preserved formation integrity. It could fire, unless the background contained civilian traffic and a live council record. Every legal, physical, and tactical constraint became another wall. And humanity had spent 9 days learning where all the walls were. Tal's hand landed on the table. You built a military doctrine around the negotiations. Nadia looked at him. No, we built negotiations around reality. Semantics. Physics. His liaison whispered again. Minister Control Authority is requesting permission to withdraw. Tal looked toward the tactical screen. The Veyer ships were not destroyed. That was the humiliation. If wreckage filled Hearthline, the compact could call the humans bloodthirsty. It could show funerals, broken hulls, burning stations. Instead, 61 warships were being separated, blinded, slowed, and parked while civilian traffic continued moving around them. A grain carrier passed within several thousand kilometers of a disabled Veyer cruiser. Its captain transmitted a routine delay complaint. The message appeared automatically on the neutral traffic channel. Asen heard one of the human aides suppress a laugh. Nadia did not. Tal did. His face darkened. Your people find this amusing. No, Nadia said, they find the traffic complaint familiar. 61 compact warships are under attack. Then order them homes. You think you have one because you trapped a patrol force. Nadia's gaze hardened. Not triumphant. Tired. We think your crews are still alive. For the first time, Tal had no immediate answer. The strongest Veyer group changed tactics. Instead of trying to escape or preserve formation, 6 cruisers accelerated directly toward the Warden Arc. Asen stood. That is a charge. Tal turned toward his military liaison. I did not authorize that. The liaison was listening to 3 channels at once. Local commander believes the human control pattern collapses if he forces close engagement. Nadia's communications aide murmured, control ships requesting release. Asen looked at her. Release for what? Nadia did not answer. She touched her earpiece. Negative, maintain bounded response. The aide relayed it. Tal stared. They are charging your fleets. Oh yes. And you refuse your commanders. I refuse unnecessary escalation. Asen looked back to the charging cruisers. The wardens separated. Not retreating. Opening. A passage appeared in the arc. Tal's eyes narrowed. His commander saw it too. The 6 Veyer cruisers drove through. Asen felt the old model trying to return. Perhaps the wardens truly could not survive close engagement. Perhaps their strange control doctrine depended on distance. Perhaps the Veyer commander had finally found the answer. The 6 cruisers crossed the arc. Nothing fired. Then their engines dimmed. All 6. Simultaneously. Asen's liaison made a sound he had never heard from her. What? She dragged telemetry across her display. Their reactors are stable, drives intact. No strike detected. Tal was already demanding an explanation from his own officers. Responses overlapped. Then the Veyer liaison looked up. They cannot accelerate. Why? No answer. Nadia closed her eyes briefly. Not relief. Recognition. She had expected this. Asen turned on her. What did your ships do? Nothing to their drives. Then why are they dead in space? They are. An envoy. Nadia pointed toward the navigation map. Asen followed. The 6 Veyer cruisers had crossed through the Warden Arc at high acceleration. They were now inside a narrow gravity contour near the edge of Hearthline's stellar mass shadow. Their drives could still operate, but any hard burn in the directions needed for combat would put them onto collision risk vectors with the commercial corridor within minutes. Automatic Veyer navigation safeties were preventing the burns. Tal's face emptied. "Turn off the safeties." His liaison did not move. "Minister, override them. If they miscalculate, override them." Nadia's voice cut through the room. "Don't." Tal rounded on hers. "You do not command my ships." "No, but your crews know what that override means." The Veyer liaison looked at his minister. "The human vessels did not disable us." Tal whispered, "Then move." "They shaped our approach." The sentence landed harder than a weapons report. Asen saw the whole sequence at once. The opening in the Warden Arc had never been a weakness. It had been an invitation. The Veyer commander had selected the route himself. The humans had simply made one route look better than all the others. Audience ahead. Choice ahead. Consequence afterward. The 6 cruisers floated intact. Their weapons remained powered. Their crews remained alive. And they could do almost nothing useful without risking civilian lives in full view of the Galactic Council. Tel sat down. Not because anyone ordered him to. Because his legs appeared to lose certainty. Asen glanced toward Nadia. She had taken one sheet from her stack. The first agreement draft. Its edges were worn from handling. A narrow strip along the side carried repeated human corrections to navigation language. Tal saw it. This was always the plan. Nadia shook her head. This was always the contingency. There is no difference. There is every difference. You came prepared for wars. We came prepared for you to choose one. The council feed changed. A procedural banner appeared. Emergency session requests multiple. Asen ignored it. His duty was still the live mediation record. Tal's liaison spoke quietly. Compact Command is asking whether council observers will certify a withdrawal corridor. Asen almost answered automatically. Then stopped. This was Nadia's moment. Humanity could demand surrender. Boarding. Disarmament. Reparations before release. It had a fleet physically unable to maneuver coherently and politically unable to fire freely. The Veyer had violated the agreement in front of the galaxy. Nadia could extract almost anything. Asen watched her study the tactical wall. One damaged human escort had dropped behind the relief convoy. Its hull showed a dark scar where the first Veyer beam had grazed the field. Another escort was towing a Veyer ship, whose steering had failed after its external control array was disabled. Human rescue drones moved between both sides. Nadia asked any life support failures. The liaison checked. 2 Veyer hulls report cooling degradation. 1 human escort reports internal injuries. No reactor emergencies. Medical access. Opens. Keep it open. Tal stared at her. You are treating our crews. We said we would. After they fired on you. Our medical guarantee did not contain an anger clause. Asen looked down before his expression betrayed him. Something in him shifted. The Veyer had built their strategy around a simple model. Humans negotiated because they feared the cost of force. But human restraint had survived the moment force became cheap. That was the part the model could not absorb. Anyone could advocate restraint from weakness. Humanity was choosing it while holding the stronger position. Tal looked older. Terms, he said. Nadia did not respond immediately. Asen noticed her hand. It was trembling. Barely. She folded it around the cold cup until the movement stopped. The heartbeat inside the diplomatic machine. For hours she had appeared almost unnaturally calm. Now Asen understood the cost. Calm was not absence. It was control. She spoke. All Veyer warships reduce weapons to standby. Human forces establish a withdrawal lane. No boarding except where required for emergency towing. Disabled compact ships may retain internal security weapons. Medical craft move first. Tal blinked. That is all. No, of course not. Nadia turned the Warn Agreement draft toward him. The compact recognizes the Hearthline civilian settlements as protected from unilateral military enforcement pending arbitration. Tal's jaw said, "And both sides accept permanent neutral traffic telemetry verification. And any future military crossing requires council notice before entry, not after." Tal stared at the paper. "You are asking me to sign the agreement I rejected." "No." Nadia removed the first page. Underneath was a shorter document. "We removed the parts that required trust." Austin felt that sentence remain in the room. Tal read. The new terms were harder than the earlier human proposal. Not punitive. Hard. Automatic verification. Mandatory standoff distances. Independent navigational custody. Public breach records. No private interpretation after a crossing. The agreement no longer assumed goodwill. It assumed measurement. Tal looked toward the live council indicator. "You prepared this too?" "Oh yes." "When?" "Before the meetings." "Because you knew we would attack." "Because we did not know." Tal seemed almost offended by that. Nadia continued. "Diplomacy is not believing the other side will choose peace. It is giving them a real chance to choose it." Austin expected the line to become a speech. It did not. Nadia pushed the document across the table. "Your commanders need a corridor." Tal read in silence. Out in Hearthline, the situation changed again. The Veyer reserve group near the outbound throat had not fired. Its commander began lowering weapon output independently. One ship, then another, then the rest. Human Warden vessels responded by widening their positions. The withdrawal lane appeared on the map. No triumphant advance. No pursuit. Space simply opened. Tal noticed. "You are letting them go before I sign. We are letting medical ships move. You are giving up leverage." Nadia glanced at the damaged hull reports. "People are overheating." It was such an ordinary answer that Austin felt embarrassed by the question. Tal signed. The effect on the tactical map was immediate. Veyer weapons went to standby in groups. Human firing solutions disappeared with them. Disabled ships were assigned tugs. Navigation custodians shifted outward, expanding the safe corridor. Civilian traffic control issued new routing instructions. The battle did not end with an explosion. It became traffic management. For several minutes, no one at the negotiation table spoke. The Galactic Council feed remained live. Austin wondered how many doctrines were being rewritten on distant worlds. Then a new alert appeared. Unknown contacts. Far beyond Hearthlines. A great many. Tal saw it at the same moment. His eyes widened. Human contacts. Not entering. Holding beyond the system boundary. Nadia's communications aide quietly handed her a tablet. Austin did not need to ask what the contacts were. The signatures were similar to the Warden control ships already present, but heavier. Different classes. Different mass profiles. They had arrived after the fighting began. Human reserves. Tal whispered how many. The liaison stared at the count. 106 confirmed hulls. No one in the room spoke. The number was absurd in a way the earlier encounter had not been. 29 escorts had defined the negotiations. The Wardens had shattered that assumption. Now another 106 waited outside Hearthline. They had not entered. That detail hit Austin harder than their arrival. Humanity had possessed the ability to flood the region with warships. It had not done so during the negotiations. It had not done so when the Veyer crossed the boundary. It had not done so when the first shot was fired. Even now, after the Veyer formation had been neutralized, the reserve fleet remained outside. Tal looked at Nadia as if seeing her for the first time. Why are they staying there? Because the withdrawal corridor is already secure. You called them after you fired. And now, I told them to hold. You have over 100 ships waiting outside a battlefield you control. Oh yes. Why? Nadia glanced at Austin. Perhaps she realized the question was no longer Tal's alone. The entire council was asking it. Her answer was short. Because we don't need them. That was the moment. Austin knew it before the council procedural system reacted. The Vayer defeat was not the disabled ships. Not the trapped cruisers. Not the signed terms. It was that answer. A force large enough to turn the engagement into catastrophe had arrived, and humanity treated its non-participation as the correct outcome. Capability without expenditure. Dominance without spectacle. The model broke completely. Austin activated the council channel. Galactic Council record. This is Mediator Terv Austin. Hearthline hostilities have ceased. Withdrawal procedures are active. Civilian traffic remains protected. Requests flooded his console. He selected the council chair. The chair's image expanded over the wall. She was an elderly Sarathi with skin like pale stone and 4 dark eyes. Mediator, she said, the council requires clarification. Proceed. Is humanity accepting the withdrawal rather than demanding compact surrender? Nadia looked toward Austin. He answered from the signed terms. Oh yes. Are Vayer crews being detained? Only where medical evacuation requires transfer. Are the newly arrived human military forces entering Hearthline? Austin looked toward Nadia again. She shook her head. No. The council chair paused. Minister Tal, does the compact accept the revised boundary procedure? Tal closed his eyes briefly. Oh yes. Does the compact acknowledge that its forces crossed the prior boundary first? His expression tightened. Oh yes. Does the compact acknowledge first weapons discharge? A longer pause. Oh yes. The chair's 4 eyes shifted toward Nadia. Envoy Pell, does humanity consider the Hearthline dispute resolved? No. Tal looked up sharply. Nadia continued. We consider the armed phase stopped. The dispute still requires work. Austin almost smiled. After everything, the human diplomat was distinguishing stopping a battle from solving a problem. The chair seemed to understand. What does humanity request from the council? Observers, navigation auditors, civilian claims assessors, and a new mediator team. Austin blinked. A new team. Nadia looked at him. You've been awake almost 20 hours. He stared at her. Then, against his better judgment, he laughed. The sound escaped him before he could stop it. Around the table, tension fractured. Not vanished. Fractured. A Vayer aide rubbed both hands across his face. One human communications officer finally drank from a bottle that had been sitting unopened beside her since the first alert. Austin's liaison sat down as if she had only just remembered chairs existed. Tal looked at the signed agreement. What happens to my ships that cannot restore maneuver control? Nadia answered without hesitation. Human tugs take them to the outer repair anchorage. Your engineers remain aboard. Neutral inspectors observe. You trust us with internal control. They're your ships. The old minister looked down. Austin wondered whether humiliation would drive him toward one final insult. It did not. Your fleet could have destroyed mine. Nadia's face changed slightly. Not pride. Something closer to irritation. That would have made tomorrow worse. Tal nodded once. It was the smallest movement he had made all day. But Austin recognized it as the first decision produced by a new model. The council chair spoke again. Mediator Austin, the council is entering a provisional reclassification notice. Austin frowned. For Hearthline. For human strategic status. The room went silent. Nadia's brows drew together. The chair continued. For decades, council security models have categorized humanity as a high-capability regional power, with unusually cautious expeditionary doctrine. Austin heard someone inhale. Tal looked toward the warden markers. The chair said that category is no longer adequate. Nadia said nothing. The provisional notice will classify human expeditionary restraint as a deliberate strategic condition, rather than evidence of limited projection capacity. Human standoff deployments will no longer be modeled as absence of force, without independent verification. Austin understood immediately. It sounded bureaucratic. It was enormous. Every military ministry using council threat models would now be required to separate what humanity had deployed from what humanity could deploy. Silence would no longer equal absence. Small numbers would no longer equal limitation. Restraint would no longer be entered as incapacity. Tal gave a dry, bitter sound. So this is what they win. Nadia looked toward him. No, he gestured at the council screen. Strategic reclassification. We wanted a safe corridor. And you leave with greater status. We leave with injured sailors, damaged ships, and a treaty that is worse than the one you could have signed yesterday. Tal stared at her. Nadia leaned back. If you need this to be a victory ceremony, Minister, you're still looking at the wrong thing. The council chair ended the formal broadcast several minutes later, but the public record remained available to member governments. For the first time all day, the green live seal disappeared. Austin felt the room become smaller. A room again. Not a stage watched by the galaxy. Human aides began collecting tablets and paper. Veyer staff opened technical channels with withdrawal coordinators. Tal remained seated. Nadia gathered her maps. One page had been creased during the fighting. She smoothed it against the table with the side of her hand. Austin watched. 9 days earlier, he had thought the paper was an affectation. A human preference for something old-fashioned. Then he had thought it was legal caution. Then perhaps tactical preparation. Now he understood that the map had never changed. His interpretation had. You marked every corridor, he said. Nadia looked down. Most of them. Before today. Oh yes. You expected this. She shook her head. You keep using that word. Then give me a better one. She considered. We respected the possibility. Austin absorbed that. Across the room, Tal stood slowly. His ceremonial mantle was still crooked. For once, none of his aides corrected it. He approached Nadia. Austin became aware of every human security officer without seeing any of them move. Tal stopped at the edge of the table. Yesterday, he said, you offered shared patrol authority. Oh yes. That offer is gone. Oh yes. Could it return? Nadia studied him. Not tomorrow. Tal nodded. But someday. If the verification system works. The Veyer minister looked toward the tactical display. His ships were moving out in broken groups, escorted by human tugs and neutral medical craft. The wardens were not following beyond the agreed line. Outside the system, the 106 heavier human contacts were already turning away. Tal watched them. So diplomacy starts again. Nadia placed the last map in her folder. No. Tal looked at her. She fastened the folder shut. Work starts again. Diplomacy comes after we prove we can do the work. He seemed to think about arguing. Instead, he held out his hand. Nadia looked at it. Then took it. No applause followed. No council cameras remained live. Austin was glad. Some moments became smaller when performed for history. Tal left with his delegation. The human security team relaxed only after the hatch closed. Nadia sat again. Her tea was still there. She picked it up, tasted it, and made a face. Terrible. Austin stared at her. You drank it through an armed confrontation. I was busy. It was cold before the first shot. It became a matter of principle. That time he laughed deliberately. The tactical liaison walked over carrying a slim neutral navigation strip. During the withdrawal, the strip had displayed the temporary hearthline boundary as a moving line of blue points. Now she placed it on the table. Mediator final verified positions. Austin looked at the lines. The navigation custodians had returned to the coordinates both sides had just accepted. Tiny lights. Nothing dramatic. No warship silhouettes. No weapon ranges. No casualty figures. Just a boundary that now meant something because everyone in the room knew what happened when someone chose to ignore it. Nadia stood. Keep that. Austin looked at the strip. Why? You'll need it for the next matings. He raised his head. You expect me to mediate again? You already know where everyone lies. He considered objecting. Then he looked through the arbitration vessel's forward glass. In the distance, the last Veyer cruiser crossed the blue navigation line on its way home. A human tug released it. The tug stopped at the boundary. The Veyer ship continued alone. Farther out, the final warden turned away from Hearthline without firing another shot. Austin placed the navigation strip beside the signed agreement. For 9 days, the line had been ink, light, coordinates argument. Now a ship crossed it in peace. And this time, both sides knew exactly what it meant.